Hey all, so we're doing another Spotlight with Context video, this time taking a look at Cassie Lang, who is obviously coming out in anticipation of the Ant-Man movie this month. Cassie is a lot of fun to play and has some really interesting abilities, so we're going to get into them. First off, to touch on base stats, just to look at prestige, Cassie's isn't exceptional. She's on par with Captain America Sam Wilson, so she is in the top 20, but not in the top 10, and definitely not in the top 5. It won't hurt to sig her up if you like playing her, but she's not going to be a prestige chase. So, the first thing to talk about is that Cassie has a shrinking heavy attack. The obvious comparison is, of course, Tigra, since her heavy attack can cause miss. Honestly, this is closer to Mysterio's in some ways because it consumes a currency, it's limited in how you can use it, but it's even more powerful than Tigra's because it causes miss against all attacks, not just non contact special attacks. So you have to be a bit more choosy with it, but it's a very powerful ability, and we'll talk about that a bit more later. The other thing to talk about with Cassie is that she is probably the new Power Sting Queen. She has a lot of them, they're very strong, and you're gonna want to be triggering them as much as possible. She also has some very powerful immunities, which kind of boils down where her strengths are. She is a fusion in a lot of ways of the two superheroes that she learned the most from, Scott Lang's Ant-Man and the Wasp. You got your shrinking, you got your immunities, you got your power stings. It's great. So, weaknesses, this is directly tied into the strength of her heavy, as we talked about earlier. It is limited. You can literally stun yourself if you're not careful, and you will probably get wrecked in short order if you do so. The other thing is that you do kind of have to be careful with just balancing all of the currencies and debuffs that she relies on, and basically you're just going to have to pay attention. That is her biggest weakness. I don't think that it's really like walking a tightrope. The balancing act isn't too fine. I do think that she's going to be relatively accessible, but what that means is that if you're taking her into nodes and fights where there are more complications, it definitely can spin out of control. So, generally, she has very strong immunities, the same ones that Ant-Man does. She is buff immune, bringing our number of those up to kind of 4.5, if I'm remembering correctly. We have Spider-Man 2099, Titania, Red Guardian, although obviously he's weaker right now. We have Ant-Man himself, who I think is very underrated. And then we have OG Hulk with a Synergy plus Cassie. So I guess that's actually 5.5, sorry. But very powerful utility, makes her an excellent counter for characters like Mojo Dormammu, means that she can take difficult mystics on Path 2 and War. Very strong. She is also immune to poison and shock, which is not a terribly common combo. Like, it's at least not one of the hazard shift nodes that you see in War, but it comes up. It's the same immunities that Hulkling has, and his are absolutely relevant. Another thing I want to call out with immunities is that any immunity on a buff immune character is automatically more valuable in War because it is easier to slow play around hazard shift nodes if you can safely wait out whichever phase you are not immune to without having to worry about triggering Mystic Dispersion a bunch and sending Mystics skyrocketing in power. So, while Cassie is very tempo oriented, and I probably wouldn't use her where she's only half immune, I just still need to call that out because it is very strong. She is built around power stings. Note that they stack up to 30, but that means they stack up to 30. You can get a lot of these going. Obviously, they are debuffs, so that does interact with despair. She can shut down large sources of healing pretty easily and just have these debuffs up the whole fight. and this is her main source of damage. Next up, we want to talk about Pym Particles. Ant-Man has these, Cassie also has these. She gets them similarly when she prevents a buff via immunity. She also gets them when she uses her heavy to cause a special attack to miss. And the way she uses these is with her light combo Enders to inflict poison debuffs. At its base, it's a very short duration of only 2 seconds, but it scales linearly with the Pym Particles up to 12. And then while this poison is on the opponent, her power stings and taunt fall off 80% slower, meaning that they effectively last 5 times as long. This applies to effects already on the opponent, meaning that if you have 10 seconds of a power sting, right, and you apply a poison for 2 seconds, in that 2 seconds, you're not actually using up 2 seconds. You're using up 0.4 seconds, and then you still have 9.6 outside of that when the poison expires. Now, you can get a bunch of benefit out of building up to 6 Pym Particles and getting your 12-second poison, but I think that if you're really concerned about maintaining your power stings in difficult fights, it's probably going to be more common with Cassie to just get a couple Pym Particles, land that light combo ender, slow down the power sting, and just get your opponent over the next bar of power so that her power stings will refresh. Because that is the key difference between Cassie and other power sting characters, is that her power stings always reapply when triggered. So getting even a small bit of room on their duration has a really big impact on her gameplay. So again, do not be scared to use this poison before you get to 6 Pym Particles. I think that's going to be one of the most important lessons people need to learn with her. So, her heavy attack, this is the flashy thing, right? This is what has people saying Science Tigra. I don't think that that is the best comparison. You can certainly do similar things with it. You can cause specials to miss, you can heavy punish specials more easily because of it. It is a skill you should work on. But you also don't need to play her like Tigra. I do not think that Cassie is someone that you should only use if you have the spacing down for a bunch of different special attacks. Her heavy causes miss against all attacks, meaning that, as with Wasp, you can just throw it at the end of a 4-hit combo before you use your combo ender, shrink down, cause the opponent to hit into you a few times, and then release your heavy. And you're going to, as it says here, charge up dormant power stings, and then convert them by landing your heavy, and now you're cooking with gas, because that is the whole point of Cassie's kit, is to get power stings on the opponent. So you can do the fancy Tigra stuff, but I really encourage you to think of that as a bonus, and think of the primary purpose of her heavy to be just charging up, causing the opponent to miss you a few times, and then landing that heavy to start stacking power stings. I personally recommend doing this after you've already hit the opponent a few times, so that this heavy landing will actually push them over a bar. They will then immediately throw a special, or hopefully soon throw a special. That's going to reapply the power stings, and then hopefully you're starting to get to your special one. You can use that to push them over a bar, and they activate another special, take more power sting damage. That's the core of her loop. We'll talk more about the special one later, but I really just want to dial in that you use this special in combos, in just regular fighting. You do not have to be fancy with it. So I've kind of danced around it, but we also need to talk about her fuel. She starts with 300 and consumes it very rapidly while charging heavy attacks, and then when she's not charging a heavy attack, she'll regain it slowly. If you run out while charging, you are passively stunned for 2 seconds. The AI is going to punish you. Now, Cassie does make good use of inequity if you already have power stings on the opponent. There are ways in which she can mitigate damage. You may not die instantly when this happens, but I think it goes without saying that this should be avoided. we generally do not try to stun ourselves in the middle of fights. And that just reinforces what I said about not having to be fancy. This is something where, unlike Tigra, every time the opponent throws a special when you're playing as Tigra, every time they throw a heavy, if you know the spacing, the correct move is to heavy punish, with very, very few exceptions. There isn't really a thought to it. It's, I have practiced this, I know how to do this is the thing to do, execute, done. With Cassie, you're going to need to be a little more strategic, because if you throw that heavy without thinking too often, you're going to get stunned, you're going to get wrecked. And so you need to pick your spots. Maybe this is where I'm going to shrink because their special will miss me a couple times. I'll get my Pym Particles. I'll get some extra dormant power stings. This is going to be a really good spot for me. This is going to swing the fight. But that means picking other spots where you know I may not have the fuel for this. Maybe I'm not going to get as many dormant power stings off of this use. This is a time for me to not do it. And I think that's going to be a very important thing to learn in playing her as well. Now, I mentioned the special one earlier being a way to push the opponent over a bar of power. Well, as you can see here, if they're under a bar of power, if they're under a bar and a half, then this actually increases their combat power rate, meaning that throwing this will almost always shoot them up to a bar and a half of power, and therefore they will have a special to throw afterwards. They will be more likely to throw it because of the taunt debuff that this applies, which, remember, increases chance to activate specials by 70%. And then you can just keep doing your thing, because the point of Cassie is almost always to just keep getting those power sting triggers. Now, as a defender, this does inflict a combo detonation debuff on activation, meaning it does not need to hit you, and you have to build 14 combo in 12 seconds. That is not particularly easy. The burst of direct damage is not fun. You can counter this with champions that build extra combo. Honestly, with the state of the game right now, the best way to counter this is probably with a Shrugger. Because it is a debuff that will get rid of it, going to help you more 9 times out of 10. The good thing is that that debuff will not reapply if it's already active, so you don't have to worry about overlapping triggers as with encroaching sleep or encroaching corruption. So that part at least is easier. So the special 2 gains a bunch of attack rating for each power sting on the opponent, telling you right away this is something you want to build up to because you want that extra attack rating. Additionally, if that taunt is on the opponent from the special 1, then it deals guaranteed critical hits. A little homage to Wasp, who was one of the first champions with guaranteed critical hits on her heavy and canceling into specials. Gotta love that. So the way that you usually want to use this is after the fight's been going on long enough for you to have a bunch of power stings on the opponent, you throw the special 1. As you are close to 2 bars, then they throw their special, they refresh their power stings, and you just try to race to 2 bars to make sure that that taunt is still up, and boom, do an absolute ton of damage. Because this is actually hit damage, yes, as people have pointed out, she's going to be very good with power back boosts. Have fun! And then the special 3 is not something that you're going to use very often in shorter fights. I don't think you're ever going to intentionally use it in battlegrounds, but it is pretty darn good. First off, you inflict a 10-second crush debuff, which is the debuff form of unblockable. We've also seen it on Jessica Jones. And this just allows you to freely wail into your opponent. Blocking will not save them. It's very fun. Additionally, she gets a permanent Fury passive. It's not the biggest Fury in the world, but it's a good 30%. Note that this is additive, so this won't do the most on her special 2. And the power stings that she has scale with base attack, remember? So there are a number of things in her ability that won't feel a full 30% boost from this, but it does mean that just all of your basics are going to hit harder in general. That on its own is quite good. Additionally, you're going to have 1400 physical resistance, again, indefinitely, which is about 40%. So that's going to make Cassie better at blocking, that's going to make her better at taking hits. Is just really, really nice. Obviously, crits do bypass this, bleed bypasses this, but one of the other common ways of getting by resistance, poison, Cassie is immune to. So you definitely will feel the survivability bonus here. And then additionally, for the rest of the fight, all of her power stings last 20% longer. That's 20% more time to apply poisons and slow down how quickly they're expiring. That's 20% more time to push the opponent over a bar of power and get them to throw their special, reactivating your power stings. This is very, very good if you're in a longer fight. Finally, her signature ability also gives her immunity to power steal. So that's another immunity that Ant-Man does not have and comes in handy quite a bit. Honestly, I may personally want Cassie just for how good she's going to be against those really annoying Doombots in Incursions. You know, the mystic ones that not only nullify buffs off you, they also power steal every time they throw a special. Cassie is literally the perfect counter to those. That will be fun. Her power stings also get an increase to their stack limit. This scales with Sig, but at max Sig you get 10 more, so that's 30 up to 40 maximum. Pretty big power bonus. She gets a small chance to evade, but at the same time, is 9% really that small a chance to evade? We're talking with her as a defender, right? Like, a OG Black Widow has a 2.5% chance to evade, and it happens at all the worst times. I believe this is higher than Stark Spider-Man's chance to evade as well. I feel like this is going to be very annoying in Battlegrounds, especially because when she evades, she also inflicts a Power Sting debuff, and so now you have to deal with that, either by letting it expire, and it's not quick, or you have to eat the damage, or you have to purify it. Cassie's gonna be kind of annoying on defense, I think. But then we're take a quick look at Synergies. With Toad, you get an extra power sting when the opponent activates a special that triggers a power sting. So just doing your thing of pushing them over bars is not only going to do damage, it's going to ramp you. Very, very good. Toad is going to get some extra paralytic poisons when he hits into the opponent's block. That's nice for him, not quite as nice as her side of it, but gotta love the synergy name. With Ant-Man and Wasp, Cassie ramps her dormant power stings on her heavy faster, very nice. Ant-Man gets extra debuff duration, very good for his whole rotation. And then Wasp gets extra combo. This is that same node that was on Eternity of Pain Scorpion that gave you extra hits in your combo meter for landing crits, except Wasp can now just carry it around with her. This is good both because of annoying combo-based abilities like Scorpion, but also just because Wasp herself scales a lot of her abilities with combo. Building combo very quickly allows her to get a much stronger concussion, a much stronger petrify. This is really solid for her. And then some weaker, just fun ones. XL champions get XL champions grant extra attack to everyone else. Attacks involving shoes get extra attack rating with America Chavez, Quicksilver, and somebody else who totally hasn't been speculated. And then with some chosen characters that change in size, those synergy champions get extra block proficiency and block penetration. A lot of these last three are just kind of fun flavor synergies, but if you like using the other characters involved in them, they are going to help. So that is Cassie Lang. I'm honestly really excited for her to come out. She's a cool character. Like I said, she is fun to play. And I think that she's going to expand the science class in a couple strong ways. For the same reasons that I've said Ant-Man has been valuable for a long time, Cassie is also going to be valuable. She differs from the other buff immunes in some pretty important ways. Power stings are pretty helpful, and I think she has a lot of tools to make better use of them than some of the other power sting competition. And then she's also probably going to be moderately annoying as a defender. So, very cool character. Let me know what y'all think in the comments, or if you have any further questions, anything you want me to clarify. And keep an eye out tomorrow for the one on future Ant-Man. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and take care.